Good morning and welcome everyone to our next COVID-19 Creative Solutions for Your Business webinar. My name is Patrick Lensman, Senior Program Manager at the Center for Business Growth and Innovation at the University of Northern Iowa. We appreciate you taking the time to either watch this live with us or to view the recording later. Today, in our webinar, we are talking about the Iowa COVID-19 Business Impact Survey results, kind of statewide. This is live and recorded, so if you do have questions, either on Facebook or in the Zoom platform, please enter them into the Q&A box, and we'll hopefully be able to either get you the answer or provide you with the resource that can. Today, I am joined by my colleagues. Drew Conrad is the director for the Institute for Decision Making at UNI, and Christy Ryken is the director for Strategic Marketing Services, also at UNI. Haven't seen him in person in a while, but it's great to see him here on Zoom to talk about the survey. The survey was done with both Drew and Christy in partnership with the Iowa Economic Development Authority, and I think it wrapped up in late March, trying to get a look at some of the initial impacts that COVID was having on businesses in the state. So with that, I'll turn it over to Drew to kind of walk us through what we've learned.
Thanks, Patrick. Welcome, everyone. As Patrick mentioned, this is the statewide COVID-19 Business Impact Survey, which was conducted, launched on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, and it closed on March 23rd, though a few surveys came in after the fact, and just last week, an executive summary was put up online. And so we had tremendous response. Almost 14,000 surveys were completed from all 99 counties in Iowa and 742 different zip codes across the state. So 85% of the respondents were for-profit businesses, but another 10.5% were nonprofits, and 2.6% were local governments, and another 1% were one government entities across the state. So here's a map of the respondents by county. As you can see, obviously the metro areas were the largest number. They accounted for just over 53% of the respondents. However, from a rural standpoint, we had a great response rate. 46.5% were rural respondents. So there's a wealth of data, and we're still going through the data and pulling out information. So what do we find? So first, the characteristics of the respondents. The nearly 14,000 employers represent about 524,000 employees, they reported. 2/3 or 3/4 of those folks were full-time employees. The employment size ranged from one sole proprietorships all the way up to an organization with 38,000 employees around the state of Iowa. And as you can see from the bar chart here, that the majority were small employers. The large majority were under 20. Actually, a third of the respondents had 4 or fewer employees. So it was obviously a lot of small businesses are reflected in the data that we found here. And that shows up where you look at the mean, which is the average number of employees was over 45 employees, but our median was only 8 employees. So that shows you have some large organizations at the tail end of the curve that pull up that average. The industry sectors varied, and this was good. This gives us a good representation. If you think about it, the businesses that were impacted early on from the governor having businesses closed for social distancing purposes, retail trade accounted for 14%, healthcare and social assistance. And these industries that are listed here, they match up with the NAICS code, the 2-digit NAICS code, so we can down the road do some comparison of existing Bureau of Labor Statistics, Iowa workforce development data. So it's other services were another 11.8%. So, but we were glad to see a strong diversity of industry sectors from across the state of Iowa. So the first question on the survey was, is your business or organization impacted? And 83.6% of them said yes, negatively impacted. My hunch would be if we did this survey today, that percentage would be even higher, because I think a lot of the not sures would probably, in the no impact, would fall into that camp. But we did see a small percentage, 3.7, who said their businesses have been positively impacted because of the coronavirus crisis here in Iowa. So looking at how they were impacted, obviously business sales, business development was one of the top ones, along with business operations, which go hand in hand. So obviously the social distancing closures, customer demand challenges, those were the top three areas. And this was not mutually exclusive, so a respondent could select multiple responses. Employee availability is also one that was at 34.2%. My hunch would, if we'd asked that today, it'd be even higher based on the timing of when we did the survey. And then one thing I would add is we are planning on in early May doing the second round of surveying statewide. So we'll be able to go back and look at some of these data, as well as ask some additional questions on them. One of the other questions we asked is what is one of your top concerns, top three concerns, and financial impact on operations was far and above the top concern, and liquidity and capital. 3/4 of the respondents identified that. Decreasing consumer confidence and spending, more importantly, 2/3 of the respondents identified that. And then just the global impact of global recession, what is this impact going to be in the long run, was the third most common concern that they identified. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christy to talk about some of the revenue and payroll information.
So another key thing for us to understand is pre-coronavirus, what were the monthly revenues and payrolls of the respondents? So we had something to compare back to. And so at the time of the survey, the month we looked at was actually February of this year, because as Drew mentioned, the survey was released in March. So if we look at what was reported, and this was an optional question, not everybody elected to provide us a response, but we had responses for revenue from over half, and they ranged from very low to $100 up to $400 million. And it's important to note that this is monthly, not annual. If we sum that all up, that's a total of about $4.4 billion in monthly revenue represented by the respondents. The mean was pretty high, $631,000. And the median much smaller, $33,000. And we'll talk about why that is in just a minute. And then if we look at the payroll, that was reported by a little bit less, about 41% of the respondents gave us that information, and ranged from $1,000 to just under $20,000. Again, the total sum for the month was $760,000, with a mean of $132,000. And it's much smaller median at $15,000. And one of the things that really impact is we had some really large employers, as Drew mentioned, kind of pulling that up at the tail end of the curve. So what we did is we broke it out by employee size. And these employee sizes look a little different than what you might expect. We actually created these categories to fit the data, which is why you see the kind of different range is there for employees. But if we look at the smaller end, the 1 to 2, the 3 to 5, you can see much lower monthly revenue means. They're, $3,600, $20,000, and it kind of keeps going up all the way up to, you can see the impact of those really large employers of the 31 plus employees being $1.5 million per monthly revenue. So next we wanted to, now that we know the revenue amount, what is the impact that the COVID virus has had on monthly revenue and monthly employment? And we didn't just want to know the current, we wanted to look towards the future a little bit and understand what the respondents thought would happen at 30 days out, 60 days out, and 90 days out. So what you see here is kind of the mean impact for current 30, 60, 90 days out for both revenue and employment. And you can see that the overall impact for revenue is about 50%, a little more than 50% reduction. That's a negative 51.47. And employment was just under 35% for a negative impact currently. And you can see it gets a little worse at 30 days out. And then we do a gradual increase back up to about the current impact amount. So people anticipate it's getting a little worse before it kind of ticks up a little bit. And I do want to point out there's a couple different industries that were a little bit more impacted by this than others. Retail, healthcare and social assistance, arts, entertainment and recreation, and accommodations and food services, and other services had a significantly greater negative impact on the current and 30, 60, 90 days. So those were the hardest hit. They are anticipating the greatest negative impact on revenue and employment. So next we wanted to understand how is COVID-19 impacting restrictions to physical workspaces. And you can see that just over half, 55%, said that they did enact physical restrictions to work sites, and 30% had not at the time of the survey. Again, as Drew mentioned, this has probably changed since the time the data was collected. I would expect that there would be a higher number for those that have enacted restrictions. But at the time of the survey, we also, if they had reported restrictions, we wanted to know what kind. And so you can see there underneath the most reported restrictions, about 40% said they had closed their business. 36% have reported social distancing. Some working from home was at that time about 18.6. And then reducing access, for instance, having no customers, suppliers, visitors of any kind on site was about 16.5. Canceled meetings or events was 15%. We had a lot of restaurants or banks reporting carry out, drive up only, about 12%. And then of course, several reported reducing staff layoffs or furloughs. At that time was about 12%. Again, all of these numbers would probably adjust up if we repeated that at this time. We also wanted to understand, do employees in different industries have the option or the ability to work from home? And then are they eligible, number one, and are they currently doing that? And what we found is industries that are a little bit more service oriented in terms of professional services, like professional, scientific and technical, information, education, real estate, and finance and insurance. You can see those are the top 5 that reported the greatest eligibility to work from home, and also in most of those cases, the greatest number of currently working from home. And then you can look again at the tail end at the bottom, you can see that manufacturing, construction, retail, and accommodation and food services had the lowest eligibility, and those currently working from home. Again, a lot of those are industries where the work cannot be performed off-site in many of those cases. I did want to point out there were a couple significant differences. Finance and professional and scientific had a significantly higher of employees eligible to work and are currently working from home. And also employee size made a big difference here too. Larger companies had more employees eligible and currently working from home as well.
Awesome data.
It's a lot we're throwing at you, so I guess you might have to watch the rerun to catch up on some of this. So for those people that can work from home, we wanted to know about their readiness to work from home, because it can't just magically happen. You kind of have to have the tools and the structure in place. And so we wanted to understand that. So we asked folks, do your employees have access? Are they eligible to have laptops and mobile phones? And about 40% said yes. Do they have secure remote access to servers at work? Lower percentage, just under 28% said yes. And do they have access to collaboration software, things like Microsoft Teams or other kinds of tools to help people work together that normally would do so physically in the office? And only about 23% said yes. There was also a few that reported some concerns about bandwidth limitation and cybersecurity. Those are important things.
Oops, sorry about that.
It's okay. And they said there was about under 10% that the employees are eligible, but they don't have access to the hardware and software they need at this time. Again, that might change because I think a lot of employers have been forced to move more quickly in that direction. But at the time of the survey, was the situation. And we did find that employees that have more than 12 employees were more likely to have laptops and mobile phones, remote collaboration software, and access to secure servers. So that was a key thing here. The larger companies have had a little bit more of an easier time adjusting into a remote work situation. Okay. Next, we wanted to look at leave and absence policies related to COVID and understand where the current situation was and how employees are eligible for certain kinds of leaves. And what we found is it really varies very greatly. Just under 29% indicated that eligible employees may work remotely without using sick leave or vacation days. Just over 20% who are required not to come into work receive no pay. So there's a big gap there. About equal amounts can use sick leave, and then others just get no pay. About 6% were offered additional leave, and then just 1/4 basically said their organizations offer no pay to employees or who choose or are required not to come into work. And again, there were some industry differences here. Retail trade and accommodations and food services were significantly more likely to offer pay, not to offer pay to employees unable to come into work. So that is a key difference. And we wanted to end the survey with just trying to allow people to tell us what kind of assistance or resources they need. And we got answers from nearly every respondent. Drew and his team can attest to the many, many hours that it took to go through these responses to find common themes and threads so we can even produce this table. But what we found overwhelmingly is 85% of the respondents made a comment about financial assistance. Not a big surprise. That was one of the key concerns. And so you can see the breakouts, mostly it was just general access to capital, low interest, no interest loans, grants, payroll related things, a lot of different things all wrapped up into that financial assistance. And about equal amounts of people also said communication and information. Just having information to make good decisions about how they can lead their companies and what they should plan for was 10.8%. And then also concern about their workers, unemployment, workers' compensation information was really important to them. And then the last of the bigger groups was tax relief. Deferment, looking specifically at payroll tax, sales tax, property, and income tax relief or deferments were all top responses there. So we know we threw a lot at you. We also can offer you the executive summary that has also been released by the Iowa Economic Development Authority at this web link. You can go there and access the executive summary directly. And now I guess we open it up to questions, Patrick, if there are any.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a lot of data to look through. For those of you who are just joining us, we're talking today with Drew Conrad from the Institute for Decision Making and Christy Ryken from Strategic Marketing Services. And we're talking about the COVID-19 Business Impact Survey. You can find it there at the link on the screen. I think we also put it up on our Advance Iowa page, right where you've clicked to join the Zoom webinar. And we'll be sure to put it in the description of the recording, so you can find it really easily right there. So we've got a few minutes left. If you do have questions, either live here in Zoom or on Facebook, be sure to comment or post those. One thing that I was wondering if both of you would maybe consider answering, as you looked through those comments that we just saw on that last slide, were there any that you can recall or be willing to share that maybe really stuck out to you as a you know, a unique take or interesting comment on this current survey? I remember talking to Paul, who had helped, I think, go through some of these, was, you know, just a comment about, you know, can you refer me to a good bankruptcy attorney? Hopefully a little tongue-in-cheek there in that reply. But looking through these, were there any specific comments there or threads or themes that you could maybe speak to a little bit deeper on this list?
Well, Patrick, the one thing that really kind of somewhat surprised me, I knew financial assistance would probably be at the top of the list, but the request for information, you know, communications and information coming in second was a little surprising. You know, there's such uncertainty that business owners and organizations had. And so that, you know, kind of shaking out where it was in the number 2 position was a little surprising for that, but it's understandable. There's so much uncertainty out there. And at the time, there was a lot, you know, every day there was a new announcement coming on, a new state level restrictions coming down. So it's understandable now thinking back upon it, but that was the one that surprised me the most.
I don't know if I had any surprises, but you have to remember this survey got out there pretty early on. And so people were not just responding in terms of, you know, like professional business responses, high emotions communicated in a lot of this very understandably. And there was a lot of varied responses in terms of when we opened the survey on March 17th, even to when we closed it a week later. You know, you could just kind of see the increasing despair, which, you know, is normal. And I think it's important for people to know that they're not alone. Everybody is feeling that way. And the other thing I would say is there's just a lot of concern, not just for themselves as business owners, but for their employees, which I think is really commendable to the respondents as well.
Absolutely. So one other thought I had, so my center, the Center for Business Growth and Innovation, has used the comments and themes here to try and actually bring topics to this webinar series that you're a part of, either for businesses watching or our friends in the economic development community. Can you speak to a little bit about how these results have maybe helped shape any other programming or conversations around the state?
Well, the results, basically the day after we closed the survey, so on March 24th, we sent to the Iowa Economic Development Authority some preliminary results, which they used to shape some of the state programming that was rolled out. So that was one of probably the quickest turnarounds or impacts on this is the state's 2 different grant programs that they rolled out were based on what they saw preliminary in the data. And now we're starting to roll it out, the data out to local economic development organizations and others so that they can hopefully use the input that's been provided as they think about what else they could do moving forward.
I also think it's important that within the framework of the survey, we have a lot of demographic information, and in particular, the industry sectors. And you can see a lot of differences among the different sectors. So there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution for all of Iowa businesses. And so the ability to kind of segment out different industry types, different employment sizes is going to be key, not only for state, but regional and local developers, and really understanding the impact and then helping understand what their key concerns are and how they can be of assistance in terms of just maybe even emotional support, unity, but also practical things like how can we give them access to funding or employment? How can we help them with some of those things or remote work? There's a lot of opportunity for this data to be applied in very unique ways.
Absolutely. So maybe to expand on that a little bit for our economic development partners, maybe put you on the spot. Is there a way that you can slice this out that would maybe be representative more to their region?
Yeah, we're starting to pull out data based on geographies. As an example, the first area that we're working with is Chad Schreck's group up in the North Iowa Business Corridor up there, North Iowa Economic Development Organization. And so we're pulling data out for Saragota County for them. And so we can, obviously there's some minimums on number of surveys that we would want to release, but we're pulling most, with 14,000 surveys, there's a lot of data there. And so we are able for most geographies to have enough surveys that we feel comfortable releasing the aggregate data.
Yeah. Drew, do you maybe want to advance the screen to the one that shows our emails? So if anybody watching is an economic developer within the state and you would like to see if it's possible for us to pull out data for your area, you can email Drew or I and we'll respond and get back to you with that.
Awesome. That is an awesome service for the economic development community to be able to provide support to their businesses. So I think during your portion, Drew, you'd mentioned that they're looking at doing another one in early May. Can you talk a little bit about maybe what's going to be different or maybe the different things you hope to pull out in that survey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there will be some overlap questions just because we want to see where things are at. But also there's going to be some new questions and also some more detailed questions based on some targeted industry sectors that IEDA, Director Durham and others within her team want to look at. And so we're looking at the first full week of May to roll that out. And, once again, all businesses and organizations statewide will be encouraged to respond. Some of the sectors, such as obviously, I think one is manufacturing, also the tourism and hospitality industry, and a few others. There'll probably be some more questions for the respondents who will fall into those industry groups. And then we'll try to turn the data around as soon as possible. One of the challenges that we ran into with this is just the sheer volume of data. I mean, it's great to get 14,000 surveys, but it takes some time to get it cleaned up and ready to be analyzed.
14,000 is a huge number, especially when it comes to survey replies. So hopefully in that next survey, though, we can get maybe even a few more to continue to give us a good look at what's going on in the state. So we're just about out of time this morning. So thank you, Drew and Christy, for joining us. Any final thoughts or key takeaways on this or anything else you want to plug as we wrap up today?
I mean, I would plug, the next survey that, and we're also hoping to be able to find the resources to do additional surveys over the summer and into the fall so we can track this. Because, as I said, IEDA has used this information to shape their programming and their response. One of the reasons why we're waiting to do the next survey in May is to see hopefully what impacts both the federal and state assistance programs are having. So giving them a couple of weeks to get into place. So we really, can't stress enough how critical it is for businesses and organizations to participate when the next round comes out in May and those that follow afterwards if we do additional ones.
Yep, I would just encourage that as well. It doesn't matter what size of business you are, what industry sector you're in, we want to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, Drew and Christy, we appreciate you joining us for our Coping with COVID-19 Creative Solutions for Your Business webinar series. This webinar has been recorded and will be available to view on advancediowa.com and cbgi.uni.edu. Businesses, partners, friends out there that are watching, Know that all of us up here, you and I, are here to support you as we continue to work together through this crisis and try to learn more, support different ways so you can continue to move forward as we go into the summer. Feel free to call, email, reach out. And with that, we're going to be hosting these every day this week, 10 a.m. You can find the whole schedule on advancediowa.com. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking through the Payment Protection Program application. So hopefully some technical assistance there to get you working on that application and applied. Again, Drew and Christy, thank you for joining us, and we hope to catch everybody in the next one.